Hello, year 12 and year 13. I'm recording this video for both groups. Year 12, this is your Thursday work for this week, and year 13, this is Wednesday for you. Um, for those maybe who weren't tuned into the previous lesson, or just as a reminder, this task is now on task 2 of unit 4. So we moved on from the writing section and we're now working on reading tasks for unit 4. And so when I click on the date of your assignment, it tells me that your task is, I'll expand that a little bit. And by the way, I have a split screen here. Your workbook is on the bottom. Okay, your task is pages 79 to 80, just activity 3. Okay, and that's in your Unit 4 workbook. Okay, so you're going to complete these activities. We'll do some of it together just now, and then upload your work here. Okay, pretty straightforward. Now, as I jump down to the second page, I'm going to bring this to the top and do some writing on the bottom. Now, I've recreated a table that we're going to be using. Okay, well, let's just focus at the top. Now, remember, task 2 in Unit 4 is about comparing two pieces of writing. Both of them are fiction, okay, or made up, invented. They're literary texts, okay, which is fiction. And so you're going to get a brief piece for this activity of two different texts, and you're going to compare them. You're going to compare the way they're written and the effects that they create, okay? And you're going to be using all the tools that you've been using so far. So let's first read the instructions and then read the text. Complete the table below to make links or connections between text E and text F. Okay, add brief quotations to support your notes. Okay. The brakes squealed. Cal gripped the steering wheel. The car spun out of control. Everything was a blur. He shut his eyes but was unable to escape the impact of the collision or the stomach-wrenching sound of his beautiful car being ripped apart. Finally, it stopped. He was shaking but alive. The car was a crumpled mess of metal. It would have to be scrapped. Think about the feeling. Maybe make some notes in the margin for anything that stands out to you that you noticed as you were listening. It could be a word or a phrase that you thought was important or powerful. It could be something about the way the sentences are written, okay? Or some other general impression or idea that you get from that paragraph. Text F. With a shrill squeal, okay? Notice that both of them start with a squeal. The train pulled away from the station and into the countryside. I lounged back in the soft leather seats, gazed out the window, and soaked up the magnificent sights of rolling fields in all shades of green, majestic trees as old as time itself, delicate blossoms, and quaint houses speckled here and there, some so squat they looked like they didn't want to be discovered at all. In the distance, I could see the sparkle of a meandering lake, which flowed across the landscape like liquid crystal. This was paradise. Now, your task here is to do some comparing and contrasting, okay? Again, to complete the table below, okay, making the links between the two, the connections, either ways that they're similar or ways that they're different, okay, and then add a quotation a brief quotation to support your note. Okay, so for example, is the journey described positive or negative? And then again, how do you support that? Okay, so in the first paragraph, okay, I think it's quite clear, okay, that the journey is negative. Okay, and I'm gonna just move these over. Okay. And in the second paragraph, it's quite positive. Now, how do you know it's negative? Well, I might use that last sentence as a quote. Car was a crumpled mess. Okay. That shows the end result. Okay. I might want another quotation that shows the horror of the actual incident. Okay. What jumps out at you? What is there that shows how awful it was while it was happening? Okay. Stomach wrenching sound of this beautiful car being ripped apart. Okay, that shows the horror of the experience while it's happening. Okay, and then you can do the same for the positive side. What is it that shows you that this is a positive description? Okay, there's no shortage of things that you can choose, so try to focus in on the things that are most important or most powerful there. Okay, so I'm not going to do everything for you here. I'd like you to come up with some of your own ideas. Okay. What is the narrative perspective? Now, I just want to remind you of the options. First person narrative, okay, uses the word I to talk about events from the perspective of the person, one of the characters in the story. Okay. So here in the first paragraph, we have first person. Okay. And how do we know? It says, for example, I lounged. Whoops, excuse me. I have moved this into the wrong paragraph. Okay. Now, Cal is the person this is happening to in the first paragraph, and there's no mention of I. So, the second person is you. If they're saying you did this, you did that, you did the other, and there's no mention of an I, okay, that's second person, and that's very uncommon. Third person is what we have in text E. So now I'm going to add to that third person omniscient, okay, and that's omni means all, and shint refers to seeing. So this narrator can see everything, a bit like God. Okay, so how do I know that? Well, we know that there was a stomach wrenching sound. Okay, and he was unable to escape the impact of the collision. Yeah, maybe you could deduce that from outside, but the impact on Cal's stomach of the sound, okay, is conveyed to us. So how would they know that if they were not inside Cal, if they could not see inside the main character to know what he's thinking and feeling? Okay. The shaking, we know his experience. Okay, so that's third person omniscient. I might say here, his his beautiful car. Okay, they're using the pronoun his, okay, which is third person, okay, somebody else, him or her. Okay, but also it's that word beautiful suggests that the person telling this story knows what's inside Cal's head, that Cal views this as his beautiful car. Okay, I think so. I'm reading into it a little bit and interpreting. Okay, you can use other examples there. Now, how are sentence lengths used for effect? Okay, one thing you'll notice in this first passage, okay, is that, oops, excuse me, the brakes squealed, Cal gripped the steering wheel, the car spun out of control, everything was a blur. Okay, we have very short sentences for the most part. Okay, there's one longer sentence. Okay, but mostly they're short sentences. Out of control. Okay, and the impact of that is that you have lots of pauses. Give the reader time to think and build suspense. Okay, and the pauses build suspense. So they create tension, okay, or suspense. I'm going to add to that so that we can see two sentences in a row. Everything was a blur. Okay, now you can be writing this or typing this into your own. Okay, but I'd like to see you adding to these as well. Okay, now in the second one, okay, what do we notice about sentence lengths? Okay, with a shrill squeal, the train pulled away from the station and into the countryside. I lounged back in the soft leather seats, gazed out the window, and soaked up the magnificent sights of rolling fields in all shades of green, majestic trees as old as time itself, delicate blossoms, and quaint houses speckled here and there, some so squat that they looked like they didn't want to be discovered at all. Okay, you get the idea. That's quite a long sentence. And long sentences used for descriptive detail. I'm not going to quote the whole sentence. I'm just going to say, I lounged. Use an ellipsis to show that there's something that comes between. And that sentence goes all the way to discovered at all. Now, I'm going to move myself out of the way there. What I can add there, there's something about that sentence. Now, I'm really being an English teacher here, but I think that sentence almost looks like a train with lots of little compartments joined together by commas, okay? And it stretches on to the horizon, okay? And reading that sentence is a little bit like a train. It goes on, this train ride, and you can see lots of things flashing by through the windows, okay? So I may find a way to express that. Long sentence, uh, linking. Now, I don't want to be too technical here, but I might say clauses and phrases with commas mirrors the structure of a train. Now, that's not something I would expect you to write, okay, but I'm just adding it to push your thinking about structure and how it's used. The images for the scenery passes by. Now, I'm editing as I go, and you'll be doing this process as well. Sentence is like a train journey with scenery passing. On the way. Okay, now I'm getting a little poetic there, but you get the idea. Okay, now let's go to this last bit. There's a really big difference in the way that descriptive language is used between these. Okay, now that last sentence that I just mentioned is a great example. It's a very long descriptive sentence, and the description is of the countryside. Some of the things you might notice, okay, soft leather seats. That's sensory language, okay? sorry, I'm going to start with the second passage. We have sensory language. Okay. Remember, that's language that relates to the five senses. In this case, the sense of touch. Okay. Gazed out the window and soaked up the magnificent sights of rolling fields in all shades of green. Okay. We have powerful adjectives, magnificent, okay, and delicate, and quaint. Okay. But we also have language techniques. We have figurative language. So you'll remember that we're talking about similes, metaphors, personification. So, for example, as we go through this sentence, um, trees as old as time itself. Now, are these trees actually as old as time? No, the speaker is exaggerating. So you could write exaggeration, or you could call it hyperbole, time itself. Okay. Um, Delicate blossoms and quaint houses speckled here and there, some so squat they looked like they didn't want to be discovered at all. Now, the person is describing houses. So to say that houses don't want to be discovered gives houses the ability to have an opinion about whether they want to be discovered or not. That's personification. Personification. Okay. Like they didn't want to be discovered at all. And there's a simile further on in the passage. See if you can find it. Okay, a comparison using like or as. Okay, I'll leave that for you to complete. Okay, now compare that to the descriptive language in the first passage. It's very different. Text E. And I'd like you to ask yourself, how would you state the difference? Okay, what would you say is different? You could look at the examples, the observations we've made about the descriptive language in text F, and ask yourself, do you find the same thing? So do you find sensory language? Is there sensory language? Okay, I think we've already pointed out some stomach wrenching sound. Okay, that's definitely a sensory detail. Okay, he was shaking. Okay, we have a sensory detail. Okay, the stomach wrenching sound. Okay, the impact, yeah, that might be suggesting a feeling. Okay, squealing. Okay, we hear that in both. That's sensory language. Okay, so you can point that out here. I'll let you list some of the examples. Okay, what about powerful adjectives? Okay, do you have the same powerful adjectives here? Well, you have beautiful and crumpled mess, or crumpled anyway. Okay, but otherwise, you don't have powerful adjectives in the same way. And I would argue that beautiful is not a particularly powerful adjective because it's used often. Okay, so yes, you have sensory language, but what? Maybe not the number of powerful adjectives, not so many adjectives. It's more about the verbs. Okay, I would say the verbs help to describe the action because this paragraph is really about the action, I think. Okay, everything was a blur. That's another sensory detail. Okay, so you can add some of the verbs, the action words that help us understand what's happening. Okay, and I'll leave it there. Okay, now let's go on to the next part of your task. Well, here we go. Okay, using your notes from this table that we just created, write a detailed response to the question. Okay, so your job is to compare and contrast how the writers of text E and F describe the experience of traveling. Okay, so again, I would go back to Monday's assignment for year 12 and Tuesdays for year 13 and look at this framework that you have on page 77 into 78. Okay, both writers use the technique of blank to describe the experience of traveling in this case. Okay, in text E or F, the image is a positive one or a negative one and gives the reader an impression of a journey that is, how do we feel? What is it like? Okay, and then you can switch direction by contrast in text E or F, whichever way you're going. Okay, the effect is that the reader imagines a journey, a trip, a traveling experience that is, what's that experience like? Okay, and then give your evidence to support it. And that's a way to start, okay, but that's only the first piece. You'll need to go into detail to talk about how the writer describes traveling. Okay, so you might want to say, as you're looking here, what's similar and what's different. Okay, I'll jump to the last paragraph. While both writers use sensory language, okay, the writer of passage E uses more verbs to describe the action, while the writer of paragraph F emphasizes the use of powerful adjectives. That's because paragraph E is about the action of a car crash and the impact on the person involved, whereas paragraph F is about the scenery and the pleasing effect of that scenery on the speaker. Okay, so that should get you started. Okay, do your best to really analyze and compare. If you need more space, you can add a blank page in your notebook, okay, to write out that analysis. Good luck. Hope this was helpful.